Hi class, today we're looking at Chapter 5, Lesson 2, Unit Rates. What you will learn is how to find unit rates and how to compare and use unit rates to solve problems. A rate is a ratio of two quantities having different kinds of units. So it is slightly different than a basic ratio because now you're comparing the units themselves. So for example, suppose you text 60 characters in 30 seconds. So 60 characters is one unit, 30 seconds is another. So we have 60 over 30. This can be written as a rate. So this is considered a rate because you are comparing two different units of measure. When a rate is simplified so that that has a denominator of 1, it is called a unit rate. So now in this case, whenever you have that rate and you divide it to get a denominator of 1, that is considered a unit rate. To write a rate in per unit form, divide the numerator and denominator by the rate by the denominator. So in other words, if I were to have something such as $10 over 2 pence, because those are two different units of measure. We have money and we have an object of a pen. We take the denominator, which is 2, and we divide it top and bottom because I want my denominator to be 1. So it's 1 pen for $5. And then this is my unit rate. Now, when you express each rate as a unit rate, we want to round to the nearest tenth or to the nearest cent if necessary. So for example number 1, if we have 52 feet for 8 costumes, we know that we would just divide the 8 into the 52. So divide top and bottom by 8, and we end up with 6.5 feet over 1 costume. Then for example 2, we have 21 pairs of sneakers in 7 years. And again, we would do the same thing where we divide the denominator. So we divide top and bottom by 7. And we end up with a result of 3 pairs of sneakers in 1 year. Go ahead and turn your page over to the back. Complete the 4 practice problems on your own. Make sure that when you're creating the unit rate, you are dividing the denominator to both the numerator and the denominator. And if you're dealing with money or decimals, make sure you round to the nearest tenth or the nearest cent. Now, when comparing unit rates, you can also compare unit rates to solve problems. So for example, if I had 64-ounce container of sports juice costs $6.50 and a 48-ounce container of the same juice costs $4.25, which size container is the better buy? So the way we would determine this is take the amount of money, the $6.50, and we put it over the 64 ounces. And we're going to compare it to the $4.25 over 48 ounces. And what we would do to each one of these values is divide their individual denominator to the top and bottom. So we take the 650, we divide that by 64, and then we go 64, divide by 64. And that gives us a result of 0.10, so basically 10 cents for 1 ounce. And then we would do the same thing with the 425. We divide that by 48, and then we divide the 48 by 48 as well. And we end up with 0.08 over 1 ounce. So now when I'm comparing them, I notice that 10 cents is more than 8 cents. So then my final solution would end up being that $6.50 for every 64 ounce is greater than the $4.25 for a 48 ounce. But the question is actually asking which size container is the better buy. So technically, the better buy would be the one that costs the less amount, which would be the second one. So the one that costs the less is the $4.25 for 48 ounces. So this is our exact answer we want. This is the better buy. Now in this next question, there are 156 sixth graders and 7 sixth grade teachers. And we want to compare them to 120 fifth graders to 5 teachers. Which grade has the lower student to teacher ratio? So in this case, I go 156 divided by 7 top and bottom, and it ends up being 22.2 students for every 1 teacher. And then for the 5th graders, I go 120 divided by 5, top and bottom, and it ends up being 24 students for every 1 teacher. So the question's asking me which grade has the lower student to teacher ratio. Well, it would be the 6th grade, because 6th grade only has 22 students for every 1 teacher instead of the 24. So that would be the better ratio. Now, in our practice, go ahead and read each one of our word problems and create your comparison. Make sure you read the question very carefully, because sometimes finding the less than or greater than may not be the exact answer they're looking for.